She sat in that courtroom laughing like this was all a badly told joke, not charges that could see her sentenced to life for murder. This 33-year-old mother of three believed a jury would side with her. Her lawyers described her as a grieving widow who lost her husband unexpectedly. They pointed to the children's book she wrote about coping with loss, how she guided her sons through their pain. How could someone who presented herself this way be a killer? The defense seemed to make sense, but then prosecutors laid out the evidence, the text messages, the fentanyl purchases, the life insurance policies, and everything changed. What you're about to see is the moment Kouri Richins realized that the carefully created image of a grieving widow wouldn't stand up against the evidence. The moment she understood that years of financial crimes and secret affairs were about to be exposed. The moment she learned that a celebration drink she made her husband would become the centerpiece of a murder trial. But there was something Kouri did 3 weeks before her husband died that prosecutors would later call a practice run. Something that happened on Valentine's Day 2022 that would prove this wasn't an accident. Keep that Valentine's Day detail in mind. We'll come back to it. Kouri Richins was dead. What happened in that bedroom in Thomas, Utah would later be pieced together through phone records, financial documents, and witness testimony. This is the case of a real estate agent whose celebration drink at home led to a life-changing investigation. And every single detail has been verified through court records, on police reports, toxicology findings, and prosecution filings. If you've never heard this story before, prepare yourself because what happened in Summit County, Utah will challenge everything you think you know about financial desperation, secret relationships, and how someone can smile and laugh while being charged with murdering their spouse for money. Kouri Richins was 39 years old, a stone masonry business owner, father to 3 young boys, an outdoorsman who loved hunting and coaching his kids' sports teams. On the night of March 3, 2022, around 9 p.m., he was celebrating. His mother, Lisa Darden, was there. His wife, Kouri, was there. They were happy. Kouri had finally closed on a massive real estate deal. A 20,000 square foot mansion in Heber City with a 4,000 square foot guest house on 10 acres. The potential profit was huge, in $12 million if everything went according to plan. Kouri made Eric a Moscow Mule that night in their kitchen, a celebratory drink. She brought it to their bedroom where Eric sat on the bed. What Kouri didn't know yet was that this drink would become the most important piece of evidence in a murder investigation. That toxicology tests would reveal something in that drink that would destroy her claims of being a loving wife. She then went to sleep in one of their children's rooms because the child had been having nightmares, she later claimed. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, she said she came back to their bedroom. Eric was cold to the touch. By 3:22 a.m., after trying life-saving methods on her own to no avail, she called for help. First responders arrived at the family's home. They tried to revive him, but it was too late. Kouri Richins had been dead for hours. When paramedics examined the scene, they noted something that didn't match Kouri's story. She claimed she'd performed CPR. The blood evidence suggested otherwise. Keep this detail in mind. It becomes important later. The autopsy results came back weeks later. What they revealed would transform this from a tragic death into a murder investigation. Kouri Richins died from fentanyl poisoning, not just any amount. According to the medical examiner, he had approximately 5 times the lethal dose in his system. The fentanyl wasn't medical grade. It was street fentanyl, and it had been swallowed, not injected. 20,000 nanograms per milliliter remained in his stomach fluid. But here's what investigators found that changed everything. Soon after Eric died, Kouri closed on that mansion deal alone. And then she invited friends over to her house for a large party. She was drinking. She was celebrating, just weeks after her husband's death. Eric's family couldn't believe it. They'd known something was wrong for months. Eric had told them. He'd warned them. If anything happened to him, Kouri was to blame. Little did Eric's family know that Eric had been preparing for this. that he'd been taking steps to protect his children, steps that would become crucial evidence in proving what Kouri had done. But there was another detail prosecutors would later uncover, something that happened 3 weeks before Eric died, something that would show this wasn't Kouri's first attempt. Remember that Valentine's Day detail we mentioned at the beginning? This is where it comes in. Valentine's Day 2022. Most couples exchange cards and chocolates, or Eric Richins got a sandwich. According to court documents, Kouri brought Eric his favorite sandwich from a local diner. She placed it on the seat of his truck with a love note. Eric took one bite. Within minutes, he broke out in hives. He couldn't breathe. The reaction was severe and immediate. Eric grabbed his son's EpiPen and injected himself. He drank an entire bottle of Benadryl. Then he passed out for several hours. When Eric woke up, he called his business partner. He told his friend exactly what he believed. His wife was trying to poison him. Think about that for a moment. Eric knew. He suspected. He told people. And 3 weeks later, he was dead. 3 days after the Valentine's Day incident, prosecutors say Kouri reached out to her source again, the person who'd allegedly sold her fentanyl pills before. And the pills from before weren't strong enough, she allegedly said. She needed something stronger. She specifically asked for more pills. Then Kouri sent a text message to someone else, a man she'd been having an affair with. The message entered into evidence read, "If he could just go away, life would be so perfect." The day after the Valentine's Day incident, February 15th, Kouri allegedly texted her lover those exact words. And then 2 weeks later, she sent another message. "Life is going to be different. I promise. Hang in there until Friday." On Friday, March 4th, Eric Richins was dead. Let that sink in for a moment. Valentine's Day poisoning attempt. Text message the next day wishing her husband would just go away. Another text promising life would be different by Friday. Then Eric dies on Friday. Yan first CTA, 20% mark. This pattern of financial desperation leading to murder, of secret affairs driving someone to kill their spouse, of failed attempts followed by successful ones, it's something we see again and again in cases involving life insurance and hidden debt. If cases that examine how money and relationships can drive people to murder fascinate you, hit subscribe now because I publish 2 new true crime cases every week, diving deep into the evidence that exposes the truth. But investigators needed to understand the full picture. They started digging into Kouri and Eric's marriage. What they found was a financial disaster waiting to explode. Eric Eugene Richins grew up on a cattle ranch in Bountiful, Utah. He built a successful stone masonry business called Scene Masonry that earned roughly $1 million annually. But he was devoted to his 3 young sons. Kouri Darden was ambitious. She earned a master's degree from Utah State University. In 2019, she launched C. Richins Realty, LLC, buying homes, flipping them, and selling them for profit. They married on June 15, 2013. They signed a prenuptial agreement that same day. The prenup said each person had no rights to the other's income or property, except for one critical clause. If Eric died while they were married, his stone masonry business would transfer to Kouri. Keep that clause in mind. It becomes crucial when you see what Kouri was planning. Everything had gone well for a while. Kouri started her realty business in 2019. At first, business seemed good, but the numbers told a different story. Kouri had taken out a home equity line of credit on the family home for $250,000. But the home was in Eric's name, but Kouri signed the loan documents using power of attorney. Eric wasn't aware of the loan. Between 2019 and 2020, prosecutors alleged Kouri withdrew $100,000 from Eric's bank accounts without his knowledge. She borrowed $30,000 using his credit cards. She allegedly used a fraudulent power of attorney to borrow even more money. When Eric discovered what was happening, he confronted her. According to his family, Kouri promised to pay the money back. She never did. Then Eric took action. What he did next would prove he knew his life was in danger. What he did would protect his children even after his death. In October 2020, Eric met with a divorce lawyer. He also met with an estate planning attorney. He changed his will. He formed the Kouri Richins Living Trust and placed control of his estate with his sister, Katie, not his wife. The trust was designed to protect his 3 sons. Eric transferred his partnership interest in his stone masonry business to the trust. He designated the trust as the beneficiary of his $500,000 life insurance policy instead of Kouri. Eric never told Kouri about any of it. While Kouri was planning to inherit everything when Eric died, Eric was making sure she got nothing. He knew, he suspected, and he was protecting his boys. But there was something else Eric did that would later prove crucial. Something that would show investigators he knew Kouri might kill him. Eric shared his fears with family members. He told them Kouri might kill him for money. He wanted to make sure his boys were financially taken care of. The forensic accountant testified about Kouri's financial situation in December 2021, just 3 months before Eric died. Kouri owed approximately $4 million in debt. She owned 15 properties. She had between $500,000 and $600,000 in personal property loans. In December alone, she made around 100 debt payments. At least one payment exceeded $5,000 per week. Kouri's realty company owed lenders at least $1.8 million at the time of Eric's death. While Kouri appeared successful on social media, posting about real estate deals and business success, investigators discovered she was drowning in debt, desperate for money, and running out of time. Eric's estate was worth approximately $5 million. Then there was the insurance. Prosecutors alleged Kouri had purchased at least 4 life insurance policies on Eric's life between 2015 and 2017. The aggregate death benefit totaled nearly $2 million. On January 1st, 2022, just 2 months before Eric died, Kouri attempted to change Eric's $2 million life insurance policy to list her as the sole beneficiary instead of his business partner. Eric received a notification about the change. He immediately stopped it. He called the insurance company and reversed the change. Think about that. 2 months before Eric died, Kouri tried to make herself the sole beneficiary of his $2 million life insurance. Eric caught it and stopped it. Then 2 months later, Eric was dead. But what prosecutors discovered next would show Kouri wasn't just planning to get insurance money. She was planning to take everything Eric owned. Remember that prenup clause we mentioned? The one that said if Eric died, Kouri would get his business? That business was worth about $2 million. Combined with the insurance policies, Kouri stood to gain roughly $4 million from Eric's death, enough to pay off all her debts and start fresh. But investigators needed to prove Kouri actually obtained the fentanyl. They needed to show she put it in Eric's drink. They needed to connect all the dots. What they discovered would come from an unlikely source, someone close to Kouri who would admit to selling her the drugs that killed Eric. In May 2023, more than a year after Eric's death, investigators interviewed Kouri's housekeeper. What the housekeeper told them would become the most important evidence in the case. According to the housekeeper's statement, Kouri asked her if she could get prescription pain medication. The housekeeper said she could. And the housekeeper admitted she sold Kouri what she believed were fentanyl pills. She said Kouri told her the pills were for an investor who had surgery. But there was something else, something about what Kouri allegedly told the housekeeper that would show premeditation. The housekeeper said that after Valentine's Day, Kouri came back to her. The pills from before weren't strong enough, Kouri allegedly said. She needed something stronger. 3 days later, Eric was dead. But then something happened that would shake the entire case, something the defense would use to try to get the charges dropped. In September 2024, more than 2 years after giving his original statement, a man named Robert Crozier came forward. He said he wanted to change his story. Crozier had originally told investigators he sold Kouri fentanyl pills. Now he was saying he was no longer certain he sold the pills to Kouri. He said he only believed he sold them to her, but couldn't be sure. The defense jumped on this. They argued this destroyed the state's case. Without proof that Kouri actually obtained the fentanyl, how could prosecutors prove she poisoned Eric? But prosecutors had something else, something that would show Kouri knew Eric was dying, something that proved consciousness of guilt. What prosecutors discovered about Kouri's internet searches would reveal she knew exactly what was happening to Eric that night. And instead of calling for help immediately, she was researching something else. Investigators examined Kouri's phone and computer records. What they found would show that after Eric died, Kouri didn't just delete messages with her housekeeper. She deleted messages with her lover. She deleted web browsing history. But some searches remained. Searches that were made in the hours after Eric took that drink. Searches about fentanyl symptoms. Searches about how long it takes for fentanyl to kill someone. Searches about life insurance payouts after suspicious deaths. Then there were the lies Kouri told first responders. When paramedics arrived, Kouri told them she'd been performing CPR on Eric for 20 minutes. But the blood evidence at the scene didn't match that claim. Kouri told them she discovered Eric around 3 a.m. But phone records showed activity on her phone much earlier that night. Activity that suggested she was awake and checking on something. Remember when we said Kouri claimed she was sleeping in her child's room because the child had nightmares? Investigators couldn't find any evidence the child actually had nightmares that night. What investigators found was a pattern of lies, a pattern of deleted messages, a pattern of financial desperation, a pattern that pointed to murder. On May 8, 2023, more than a year after Eric's death, Kouri Richins was arrested. She was charged with aggravated murder and attempted aggravated murder for the Valentine's Day poisoning. Kouri maintained her innocence. Her lawyers argued the state's case was built on speculation, that there was no direct evidence Kouri put fentanyl in Eric's drink. The preliminary hearing proceeded in August 2024. Prosecutors called witnesses: Detective Jeff O'Driscoll, digital forensics consultant Christopher Catramos, forensic accountant Brooke Carrington. Detective O'Driscoll testified about the investigation, and the defense asked if detectives interviewed any other suspects besides Kouri. O'Driscoll said no. Kouri was the only suspect. The defense emphasized that no fentanyl pills were ever found in the Richins' home. They argued the state couldn't prove Kouri ever had fentanyl in her possession. But then the digital forensics expert testified about what he found on Kouri's devices. Christopher Catramos testified about the digital evidence. Call records showed numerous communications between Kouri and her housekeeper. From January 1st to March 15th, 2022, data showed deleted messages between them. Web browsing history was deleted from Kouri's devices right after Eric's death. Catramos testified Kouri and her lover were in constant communication starting at least November 2021. They texted daily with some phone calls. Messages between them were ongoing around the time of Eric's death. But then the defense raised questions about the housekeeper's recantation, about Robert Crozier changing his story, about the lack of physical evidence. The forensic accountant Brooke Carrington walked through Kouri and Eric's financial records, bank statements, real property documents, loan documents. She explained the home equity line of credit taken out on the family home. The $250,000 loan signed by Kouri using power of attorney without Eric's knowledge. Then Carrington revealed something crucial. There were at least 6 instances where Kouri allegedly falsified bank account information. She used Eric's construction company account information with C. Richins Realty headers to make it appear the money was in her business account. And this allowed her to take out more loans. By December 2021, Carrington estimated Kouri owed about $4 million in debt and owned 15 properties. While Kouri appeared successful, she was actually drowning in debt, desperate, running out of options. The defense argued the financial problems didn't prove murder. They noted none of the properties were foreclosed on until after Kouri's arrest. Eric could have been aware of the transactions, but prosecutors had one more piece of evidence, something that would tie everything together. In his closing arguments, prosecutor Brad Worth laid out the state's theory. The best evidence for the attempted murder on Valentine's Day, he argued, was the actual murder 17 days later. He pointed to Kouri's alleged procurement of fentanyl 2 days before Valentine's Day, but her request for something stronger after Eric survived. The text to her lover the day after Valentine's Day, saying life would be perfect if Eric could just go away. Then Worth described what prosecutors believed happened on March 3, 2022. Kouri learned from the Valentine's Day attempt. One bite of a sandwich wasn't enough. According to testimony, Kouri kept notes in a journal. She allegedly wrote about giving fentanyl in a shot of alcohol so Eric would throw it back all at once. That's exactly what a Moscow Mule is, a drink you throw back quickly. Let that sink in. Kouri allegedly wrote in a journal about the best way to administer a lethal dose. Then she made Eric exactly that kind of drink. Then he died with 5 times the lethal dose in his system. The defense fired back, and they argued the state failed to show causation for the attempted murder charge. After Kouri left the family home on Valentine's Day morning, Eric drove to other locations. 2 hours after they were together, he reported symptoms. They pointed to the housekeeper's new statement, the recantation from Robert Crozier, the fact that detectives never looked at other possible suspects. No pills were found in the family home. The defense argued the attempted murder charge was pure speculation, but prosecutors countered. Judge Richard Mrazek said he agreed Kouri had financial and love interest motives to kill her husband. He said there was probable cause she purchased fentanyl. On August 27, 2024, Judge Mrazek ruled the case would proceed to trial. He found probable cause on all 11 counts, and including aggravated murder and attempted aggravated murder. The judge acknowledged the housekeeper's changed statement, but he noted the original statement was made much closer in time to the alleged crimes. The recantation came more than 2 years later. He also pointed to other evidence. Records showing Kouri's financial distress, internet search histories indicating consciousness of guilt, inconsistent statements to first responders. The trial was originally scheduled for April 2025, but legal arguments over jury selection caused a delay. Kouri's attorneys wanted jurors from both Summit County and Salt Lake County. They argued Summit County residents would be too familiar with the case due to media coverage. The Utah Supreme Court denied the request. Only Summit County jurors would be allowed. As of January 2026, Kouri Richins remains in Summit County Jail. She has been denied bail 3 times. Kouri faces 9 felony charges in the murder case, including aggravated murder, attempted criminal homicide, and insurance fraud. She faces 26 additional charges in a separate financial crimes case. 5 counts of mortgage fraud, 7 counts of money laundering, 5 counts of forgery, 7 counts of issuing bad checks, and 1 count each of communications fraud and engaging in a pattern of unlawful activity. If convicted on the murder charges, she faces 25 years to life in prison. 2nd CTA, end of script. This case sparked important conversations about how financial desperation can drive people to murder, how life insurance policies become motives for killing, and how someone can present a perfect image on social media while committing terrible crimes behind closed doors. If you want more in-depth analysis of cases where the evidence reveals the truth behind the lies, hit subscribe now for 2 new cases every week. Let me know in the comments what part of this case disturbed you most. The defense team says they anticipate calling as many as 20 witnesses. They say Kouri has a constitutional right to testify, and if she chooses to exercise that right, her testimony would be quite lengthy. They maintain she is innocent and that the truth will prevail at trial. But prosecutors point to the evidence: the Valentine's Day poisoning attempt, the text messages wishing Eric would just go away, the promise that life would be different by Friday, Eric dying on Friday, on the 5 times lethal dose of fentanyl in his system, the $4 million in debt, the $4 million she stood to gain from his death. The insurance policy changed 2 months before he died. The journal entries allegedly describing how to administer a lethal dose, the deleted messages, the internet searches. Kouri Richins told his family that if anything happened to him, Kouri was to blame. He changed his will to protect his sons. He cut Kouri out of his estate. He told people he believed his wife was trying to poison him. 3 weeks later, he was dead. Kouri Richins sat in that courtroom laughing, believing the jury would side with her, believing her image as a grieving widow who wrote children's books about loss would protect her. What she didn't understand was that the evidence doesn't care about images. Text messages don't lie. Financial records tell the truth. And a journal entry describing exactly how to kill someone with fentanyl in a drink becomes devastating when that's exactly how someone dies. Kouri walked into that preliminary hearing expecting the charges to be dropped, expecting the recantations and lack of physical evidence to set her free. She walked out understanding that 11 felony charges would proceed to trial, that a jury would decide if the celebration drink she made for Eric was actually a murder weapon. The final lesson: when someone is drowning in debt, when they stand to gain millions from a spouse's death, when they try once and fail, then try again and succeed, when they text their lover the day after the first attempt saying life would be perfect if their spouse would just go away, the evidence speaks louder than any carefully crafted image. And justice, though delayed, eventually exposes the truth behind the smile.